Funny, isn't it? A man can work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for 40 years, and still go to bed worried about money. He can sweat through summers, freeze through winters, pull double shifts, and still whisper to himself at night, "Maybe I'm just lazy." You wouldn't say it out loud, but you've thought it, haven't you? You look at your bills, your bank account, the number on the paycheck that never seems to grow, and you wonder, maybe I don't try hard enough, maybe it's my fault. But let me tell you something no one else will. It's not laziness that's keeping you poor. No. It's something much quieter, much older, something that wears the mask of hard work, but keeps you spinning in place. It's the rhythm you've accepted, the pattern you've never questioned. And if you'll sit with me for a little while, I'll show you. You see, the world won't call you lazy if you're always busy, and neither will you, because you're doing something. Getting up, clocking in, coming home tired. But busyness is not the same as movement, and effort is not the same as growth. You've been sold a version of effort that feels noble, working long, working hard, staying humble, asking for little. It sounds virtuous, but it keeps you broke, because beneath all of it, there's a lie that's settled in your bones long ago, that your value comes from labor, not from vision, that survival is the reward, not freedom. You weren't taught to build. You were taught to cope. And so you get up early, you hurry to the job, you give your best hours to someone else's dream. You come home late, numb in the mind, heavy in the body. Just enough strength left to eat, to scroll, to sleep. You tell yourself you'll figure things out next weekend, or next month, or next year when things settle down. But things never settle. Only you do. And over time, that quiet voice in your head, the one that wonders why you're still struggling, starts to speak in a sharper tone. You should be further by now. You wasted your 20s. You never tried hard enough. And you believe it, because the world points its finger at the poor and says, they're lazy. They don't want it bad enough. But that's not your story, is it? You wanted it. You still do. You just don't know where it went wrong. Let me tell you where it went wrong the moment you started surviving instead of choosing, enduring instead of creating, grinding instead of growing. You're not lazy. You've just been exhausted by a system that rewards obedience more than originality. You've been trained to follow, not to think, not to question, not to dream outside the boundaries they gave you. And now here you are, tired, confused, ashamed of your own effort, like it wasn't enough. But look at your life for a moment. Look at the hours you've given, the jobs you've kept, the storms you've weathered. That's not laziness. That's survival. And survival is noble. But it is not freedom. It's not wealth. It's not peace. It's not legacy. It's just the first rung of the ladder. And most people never climb past it. They told you, work hard and you'll make it. But they never told you what to work on. They never told you how to think. Or that wealth doesn't come from sweat alone. It comes from structure, from direction, from belief. And here's the hard part. It's easier to call yourself lazy than to admit you've been misled. Because if you're lazy, you can blame yourself. And if you blame yourself, you don't have to face the fear that everything you were taught might be broken, that your parents didn't know, that school didn't prepare you, that the world around you thrives on keeping you busy, but blind. No. Friend, you're not lazy, but you are stuck. Stuck in a rhythm that rewards repetition and punishes imagination. And until you step outside of it, you will keep mistaking motion for progress. So let's start there. Not with shame, not with blame, but with awareness. The quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, you've been playing someone else's game. You've been a good worker, a dependable man, a responsible woman, but now it's time to become something else, something freer, something bolder, something more awake. We'll get there, but for now, just sit with this truth. It's not laziness that's keeping you poor. It's the rhythm you were handed, the script you never wrote, and the moment you start questioning it, everything can begin to change. You wake up, you get dressed, you go where you're told, you do what you're paid to do. Then you come home, worn out. Maybe you eat something simple. Maybe you sit in front of a screen for a while. Then you sleep. And the next day, you do it again. You call it responsibility. You call it being an adult. You call it just life. But deep down, there's a question you've stopped asking. Is this all there is? The truth is, the rhythm of poverty doesn't always look like chaos. Most days, it looks exactly like order. It looks like a steady job, a clean home, a paid phone bill. But what it doesn't include is growth, change, risk, vision. You do what you must, but rarely what you could, not because you're lazy, but because you've been trained, slowly, gently, to stop thinking beyond the next paycheck. And so the rhythm continues, quiet, predictable, and deadly. You see, poverty is not just a lack of money, it's a lack of movement, a lack of vision. It's a cage with invisible bars, made of habits, fears, and old beliefs. Most people never even see the bars. They just feel the weight. They think it's normal, but you're starting to notice, aren't you? You feel the unease, the subtle pressure in your chest when another year passes and nothing's different, the frustration when someone younger than you builds something bold while you're still hoping for a raise. You wouldn't call it pain, exactly, but it is. It's the pain of wasted potential. And it doesn't scream. It whispers. The rhythm you're stuck in. It's not your fault you fell into it. Most people did. You were born into a world that teaches routine before it teaches reflection. Do your homework. Get a job. Be dependable. Don't ask for too much. No one pulled you aside and said, one day you'll look up and realize your whole life has been built around survival and nothing more. So you did what you were told, and maybe you did it well. But good behavior doesn't build wealth, and obedience doesn't create options. Only awareness does. Only intention. Only the quiet courage to pause and ask, is this the life I chose or the life that happened to me? That's the real work, not working harder. You've done that. You know how to push, how to grind. That's not the problem. The problem is you've never been taught how to pause. To sit still with the ache of a question that won't leave you alone. To admit that maybe, just maybe, everything you thought was the right way to live was only the safe way. And safety, while useful, can also be a trap. You want to know why the rhythm is so dangerous? Because it doesn't feel like failure. It feels like almost enough, almost stable, almost okay. But you were not made for almost. You were not put here to pay bills and wait for weekends. You were not meant to trade 5 days of your life for 2 days of rest. That's not laziness. That's slavery with a smile. Here's the truth I've come to learn, not from books or theories, but from watching too many good people waste too many good years. The longer you stay in the rhythm, the harder it is to hear your own song. You forget what you wanted. You forget what you dreamed. You forget that you ever had a voice of your own, because the rhythm speaks louder. It says, just keep going. Don't complain. Be grateful you have a job. And while gratitude is a good thing, it's not meant to be a cage. You can be grateful for what you have, and still hungry for something more. So I'll say it again. You're not lazy. But if you don't step out of the rhythm, you will stay poor. Not because you're bad. Not because you're weak. But because the rhythm is stronger than your will. Unless you wake up, you don't need to fight harder. You need to listen deeper. To what's been buried under the noise. To what your soul has been trying to say for years. This can't be. And it isn't. But nothing changes until you pause. Nothing shifts until you question the life you've been handed and decide, quietly, gently, firmly, that you will not sleepwalk through it anymore. There's something I want to ask you now. And I don't ask it lightly. When did you stop believing you could have more? Not just more money, but more space, more freedom, more choice. Can you remember the moment? It probably didn't look dramatic. There wasn't some grand defeat or collapse. No, it was quieter than that. Maybe you were standing in a grocery store aisle, comparing prices, or sitting at the kitchen table, looking at a bill you couldn't quite pay, or lying awake staring at the ceiling, thinking, this isn't the life I wanted. And somewhere inside you, something gave in, not loudly, not even bitterly. Just gave in. You told yourself to be realistic, to stop dreaming so big, to settle into what life had handed you. That's the moment I'm talking about. The moment your shoulders lowered, your eyes dulled, your ambition folded itself up like a letter never sent, and no one saw it. That's the worst part. No one noticed when you began to carry this quiet weight, the weight of resignation, the heaviness of dreams you've stopped naming. They still see you going to work, still see you smile and nod, maybe even joke around. But inside, something's gone missing. The spark, the hunger, the belief. You didn't become lazy. You became tired. Tired of hoping. Tired of trying. Tired of watching your best effort lead to the same dead ends. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me. There's a difference between rest and retreat. Rest is sacred. Rest is what the soul needs after labor. But retreat is what happens when hope collapses. You stop trying not because you're lazy, but because trying no longer feels worth it. That's what poverty does to you, not just in the wallet, but in the spirit. It makes you doubt the value of effort. It whispers, why bother? And you begin to live cautiously, only doing what's required, only going where it's safe, only asking for what won't get you hurt. You don't dream anymore, not really. You plan, you calculate. You stay small. Not because you want to be small, but because small feels manageable, predictable, safe. But let me tell you what safety costs. It costs you movement. It costs you vision. It costs you the life you could have built if only you had dared again. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility, because while no one may have handed you a map, while the road may have been unfair, uneven, unkind, you are still the one holding the pen now. You decide what comes next, not all at once, not with a big announcement, but in small, quiet choices. The choice to see yourself not as broken, but as buried. The choice to believe your best days are not behind you, but still waiting to be built. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds nice, but I don't have time for dreams. I've got bills to pay. I understand. I've lived it. But here's the secret they never taught you. Dreams don't need time. They need courage, not the kind that roars, but the kind that whispers, I'll try again, even if I failed before. I'll believe in something better, even if I don't see it yet. That's the beginning of wealth. Not money, but belief. Money follows belief. Action follows belief. Change follows belief. And belief starts with truth. So here's the truth. You are not poor because you are lazy. You are poor because somewhere along the way, you were convinced that dreaming was dangerous and settling was smart. And now you carry that invisible weight of fear, of doubt, of unspoken grief. But you don't have to carry it forever. You can put it down, not all at once, but piece by piece. Every time you choose to question the rhythm, every time you say no to the story that says, this is all you get, you put down some of the weight. Let that be your beginning. Not a battle cry, not a perfect plan, just a quiet shift. A deep breath. A new posture, not hunched, not hurried, but open, ready. Because no matter how long you've been stuck, no matter how many years you've spent in the rhythm, there's still more for you. There's still something in you that hasn't given up. Even now, even here. And that's where we'll go next. You didn't choose the story. Not at first. It was handed to you piece by piece. From your parents, your teachers, the neighborhood you grew up in, the quiet conversations you overheard, and the loud ones you couldn't forget. Stories like, money is hard to come by. People like us don't get rich. Just be grateful you have a job. Dreams don't pay the bills. And maybe you didn't believe them at first. Maybe you had plans. Big ones. Things you never told anyone because they'd just laugh or worse, look at you with pity. But over time, when life didn't bend the way you hoped it would, you started to wonder, maybe they were right. Maybe the game really is rigged. Maybe all you can do is play it safe, work hard, and hope for the best. That's how the story settles in, not in a single moment, but through a slow erosion of belief. You stop saying, when I'm successful. You start saying, if I'm lucky. You stop asking, what do I want to build? You start asking, what's the least I need to get by? And slowly, without even noticing, you shrink your world to fit the story you were given, instead of the life you were meant to create. That's not laziness. That's inherited limitation. You didn't start poor in the bank account. You started poor in imagination. And not because you lacked it, but because it was quietly stripped away, told it was foolish, told it was selfish, told it was unrealistic. So you folded it up and put it away. That thing in you that dreamed without fear. The younger version of you, the one who thought more was possible, got traded for the adult version, who just hopes to stay afloat. But here's what they don't tell you. The story isn't true. It might be familiar, it might feel real, but that doesn't make it truth. And you can always hand it back. You can say, no, this one's not mine. The story ends with survival. I want the one where I build. But to do that, to really do that, you have to go deeper than hustle, deeper than budgeting, deeper than motivation. You have to ask, whose voice have I been obeying all these years? And more importantly, do I still want to listen to it? The truth is, you don't need more discipline. You don't need more hours in the day. You don't need to wake up at 5 a.m. and grind until your eyes burn. You need to see the story you're in. Because once you see it, really see it, you're no longer trapped by it. You can begin to rewrite it, not with loud declarations, but with quiet, steady acts of rebellion, choosing to believe you're worthy of more, choosing to learn what no one ever taught you, choosing to plan 5 years ahead instead of 5 days. That's where change begins, in the mind, in the shift. From I have no choice to I can build something different. And listen, you're not alone in this. Millions of people walk through life repeating a script that was handed down like an old coat. Worn, tattered, but familiar, and they never question it. They just keep adjusting their posture to fit inside it. But you've paused. You've looked at your life and asked the sacred question, what if I'm not the problem? What if the problem is the story I was never allowed to change? That's not laziness. That's awakening. So today, you don't need to do anything dramatic. You don't need to quit your job or burn the blueprint. You just need to sit still for a moment and name the story. Whose idea was it that people like you don't get wealthy? Who taught you that comfort is safer than purpose? Who said life is about getting by, not building legacy? And once you see it, once you speak it, you are no longer under it. Because the story can only rule you when it stays in the shadows, but you, friend, you're turning the light on. And that changes everything. There's a strange thing that happens when struggle becomes familiar. You stop fearing it. In fact, you start to expect it. Even trust it. Because at least it's something you know. You know how to stretch a paycheck. You know how to tell your kids maybe next time. You know how to calm your heart when the card machine beeps and the cashier stares. You've learned how to carry pressure quietly. You've learned how to adjust your dreams to fit your reality. You've learned how to survive. And that's the dangerous part. Because once survival becomes your identity, you stop seeking anything more. You don't think of it as fear. You call it being practical, being wise, being responsible. But underneath those words, there's something hiding, a quiet, persistent belief. Struggle is where I belong. You wouldn't say it aloud. You might not even know it's there. But it's shaped the way you move, the way you choose, the way you hope or don't. Let me ask you something. Have you ever caught yourself rejecting opportunity because it felt too big? Have you ever looked at something you wanted, truly wanted, and found 100 reasons why it wouldn't work? Too expensive, too risky, too late, too much. And then you went back to what was familiar. Back to the job that underpays, back to the routine that numbs, back to the version of yourself that doesn't ask for much, not because you're lazy, but because you've grown comfortable in the struggle. Comfortable in the discomfort, safe in the sacrifice. You've worn hardship like an old coat, threadbare, but warm in its own way. You know how to be broke. You know how to worry. You know how to keep moving, even when your soul is tired. But what you may not know, not yet, is how to receive. How to receive abundance without guilt. How to walk through a door without apology. How to say, I deserve better, and believe it. Because when poverty becomes your home, wealth can feel like trespassing. I've seen it many times. A man wins a little money and loses it faster than he got it. A woman gets offered a better job and turns it down, not with words, but with fear. A young person starts a business and quietly sabotages their own progress. Why? Because success was foreign and struggle was familiar. So they returned to what they knew. That's not laziness. That's conditioning. Years, decades of living inside a script that says, this is the level where you belong. Don't reach too high. Don't ask for more. And eventually, you stop not because you failed, but because your comfort zone shrank until it became a cell, a well-decorated, well-defended prison. But here's the truth, struggle may feel safe, but it's not your home. It's just where you learn to survive. And survival is not the end of the story, but to write a new chapter. You have to let go of the one that taught you to find pride in pain. You have to stop proving your worth through suffering. Stop measuring your value by how much you can endure. There's no prize for struggle alone, only for growth, only for truth, only for movement. And yes, it takes courage to leave what's familiar, even if that familiar thing is hard. But listen carefully, you cannot build a new life with the same emotions that kept you in the old one. You cannot grow while clinging to a struggle that makes you feel virtuous. You cannot expand while defending a comfort zone that was never meant to be permanent. You can honor where you came from without staying there. You can remember your roots without burying your future in them. So today, I want you to look gently at your struggle. Not with shame, not with blame, but with honesty. Ask yourself, have I made this pain my identity? Have I confused endurance with direction? Have I accepted struggle as my story when it was only meant to be a chapter? If the answer is yes, that's not failure, that's clarity. And clarity, friend, is the beginning of change. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You're not broken. You've just been faithful to a rhythm that no longer serves you. Now it's time to learn a new one, not built on hardship, but on belief. Not on shrinking, but on stepping forward, even when it feels unfamiliar, because unfamiliar is where growth begins. And you were never meant to stay small. You keep telling yourself, when things calm down, I'll figure it out. When I have more time, more money, more clarity, then I'll start. But days pass, then months, then years. And nothing really changes, not because you're lazy, but because you're waiting. Waiting for the right moment, the right sign, the right feeling. But here's the truth, friend. The right moment rarely comes. Not with fanfare, not with comfort, not even with certainty. It comes quietly, in a whisper, in a pause, in a question you finally decide to answer. You've been taught to prepare. To hold off, to be ready before you begin. And on the surface, that sounds wise, but for many, preparation becomes a hiding place, an excuse wrapped in productivity, a disguise for fear. You convince yourself you're not stuck, just not quite ready. But you've been not quite ready for years. Now, haven't you? You keep gathering books, watching videos, writing lists. But you're still where you were, not because you don't care, but because deep down, you've confused comfort with safety. And waiting feels safe. Feels like control. But it's not control. It's delay. Let me ask you something. How long have you been putting your real life on pause? Not the life that pays bills, not the routine that keeps you afloat, but the life that stretches you, that challenges you, that calls something more out of you, that life has been knocking for a long time, but it doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It waits until you stop pretending that comfort is enough, until you admit that while you may not be lazy, you are tired of postponing your own potential. Some people wait until they're in crisis to change. A lost job, a failed relationship, a diagnosis, a breakdown. That's when they move, when they're forced to. But you don't have to wait for collapse. You can choose awakening instead. You can choose to move before it's urgent, to grow before it becomes painful, to build before life breaks. down around you. That's not easy. But it's powerful, because real power doesn't come from reacting. It comes from deciding. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to move. You don't need to be confident. You just need to be willing. You don't need the perfect plan. You need a little momentum, just enough to break the cycle of waiting. Even a small step is sacred when it's honest. That phone call, that conversation, that hour spent learning something new, that moment when you finally say, I don't want to live like this anymore. These small movements, repeated, are what build new lives. Not grand gestures, not overnight success, but steady, faithful movement. And I know you've been disappointed before. You tried something once and it didn't work. You put yourself out there and it cost you. You dared to dream and life hit you back. So now you wait. Because waiting feels safer than risking that kind of hurt again. But here's what you must understand. Waiting won't save you from pain. It only robs you of time. You still lose. Just slower. The pain of trying and failing is sharp. But the pain of never trying at all, that's a slow ache. A dull, hollow kind of grief that builds over years. And that pain doesn't go away. It just settles in your chest like a weight you can't name. So I'm not here to tell you to leap blindly. I'm not here to say quit your job or chase your passion overnight. But I am here to say this. Stop waiting. Start listening. Start planning. Start acting, even if it's clumsy, even if it's small. Because every day you wait, you reinforce the rhythm that's kept you poor. Not poor in dignity, not poor in goodness, but poor in possibility. And you deserve more than that. I'll say it again. You are not lazy. You're just caught in a loop that says someday and means never. But the door doesn't open with more time. It opens with courage. It opens when you stop waiting to feel ready and start trusting that movement itself creates readiness. And the moment you stop waiting, really stop, is the moment you begin. Not a new plan, a new life. You may not realize it, but you've built a fence around your life. Not with wood, not with metal, but with thoughts. Quiet, small, daily thoughts. I can't afford that. That's not for people like me. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Every time you say them, you hammer another post into the ground. Another limit. Another line you're afraid to cross. And over time, those thoughts become a border. You stop exploring. You stop reaching. You stay inside the fence. Not because someone locked the gate, but because part of you decided it was safer that. Wait. No one told you that fear would look like responsibility, like reason, like caution, but it does. Fear isn't always loud. Sometimes it sounds like the voice of wisdom, telling you to wait, to be careful, to stay where it's predictable. And the longer you listen, the more the fence begins to feel like a wall, like destiny, like something fixed. But it's not. It's only fear, wrapped in logic, wrapped in memory, wrapped in every past moment where you tried, and it didn't work. You remember those moments, don't you? The job interview you didn't get, the loan that was denied, the friend who promised to help and didn't, the business that never took off, the time you spoke up and felt small. And so now, even when opportunity knocks, you hesitate. You say, last time it hurt. Last time I lost. Last time it didn't go how I hoped. So you stay behind the fence. Not because it's joyful, but because it's familiar. And sometimes familiar feels safer than free. But friend, let me tell you something I learned too late. The cost of staying safe is much greater than the cost of trying and failing. at least when you try. You move, at least when you try. You learn, but when you play it safe for too long, you start to forget who you were before the fear set in. You forget the fire, the ideas, the visions you used to whisper to yourself late at night. You forget that you once believed more was possible, and eventually, you forget to even look over the fence. You tell yourself this is it. This is what life is. This is what I'm allowed. But it's not that. It's only the small world fear has drawn for you. And you've mistaken it for reality. So let me ask you gently, where have you fenced yourself in? What areas of your life have grown too small? What part of you still believes you're meant to stay here, just because you've been here so long? Is it your work, your relationships, the way you manage money, the dreams you no longer speak of? And more importantly, what are you afraid would happen if you left the fence behind? Would you fail, be judged, lose something? Or would you finally discover who you've been all along, beneath the fear, beneath the struggle, beneath the weight of everyone else's story? See, people often say, I'm stuck. But most of the time, they're not stuck. They're just standing at the edge of the fence, waiting for someone else to open it for them. But no one's coming with keys, because there is no lock. There never was. The fence is built in the mind, and it falls the moment you stop believing in it. So no, you're not lazy. You're not incapable. You're not unworthy. You're just scared. And that's human, but you cannot build wealth. You cannot build peace. You cannot build legacy from behind a fence made of fear. At some point, you have to look at the lines you've drawn around your life and ask, who told me I had to stay here? Why have I been so loyal to this limitation? And most of all, what if the life I want is just on the other side? It won't be easy to climb over. Fear will shout. Memories will rise. Doubt will circle like wind in your ears. But that's when you'll know you're close. Because fear always grows loudest near freedom. And when it does, don't run back. Take one step forward. Even if your hands shake. Even if your voice trembles. The step. Because you've been behind that fence long enough. And now, you're ready to live like you were never meant to stay small. There's a certain kind of comfort in being unnoticed. Strange, isn't it? You say you want to rise. You say you want to be seen, respected, remembered. But deep down, there's a part of you that sighs in relief when no one calls your name. Because when no one sees you, no one expects much. No one criticizes. No one demands. No one points a finger and asks, what are you doing with your life? And so, you hide. Not by disappearing, but by dimming. You show just enough of yourself to get by. Just enough to avoid the hard questions. Just enough to seem okay. But the truth? You're shrinking, not because you're lazy, but because you've learned that being overlooked is safer than being judged. It didn't start all at once. It started with one dream that got laughed at. One bold step that didn't go as planned. One risk that cost more than you thought it would. And afterward, you told yourself, maybe I should keep it small. Maybe I'm not meant for more. Maybe I don't have what it takes. So, you pulled back. You lowered your voice. You tucked your gifts away where no one could challenge them. And slowly, you began to find comfort in the shadows. You told yourself it was humility. But really, it was fear. You started accepting roles that required less of you. You stopped offering your ideas. You stopped reaching beyond what was asked. Because if no one sees you, they can't expect you to rise. And if they don't expect you to rise, then you never have to risk falling again. But let me ask you something, and listen closely now. When did hiding become your identity? When did just getting by become your ceiling? When did you begin to confuse invisibility with safety? Because there's nothing safe about playing small. Not in the long run. Yes, it protects you from rejection. Yes, it shields you from embarrassment. Yes, it keeps your world quiet and predictable, but it also keeps you poor. Not just in income, but in impact. In influence, in growth, in joy. Because the part of you that wants more life, more meaning, more truth, cannot thrive while hiding. And here's the hard part. No one tells you. The world reflects what you believe about yourself. If you believe you are small, you will be treated as small. If you act like you have nothing to offer, you'll be passed over. If you carry yourself like someone undeserving, you'll rarely be given more than scraps. It's not cruelty. It's pattern. We teach others how to see us, by how we show up, by how we speak, by how willing we are to stand in the light, even if our knees are shaking. So the question is no longer, why am I being overlooked? The question is, why? Have I made being unseen feel safe? That's not a question of effort. It's a question of identity. Because if you still see yourself as the underdog, the outsider, the one who never got the break, you will subconsciously create conditions to keep that story alive. You'll turn away opportunities before they have a chance to root. You'll lower your prices. You'll downplay your skills. You'll disqualify yourself before anyone else can. That's not laziness. That's fear dressed up as humility. And it's keeping you poor. So what would it look like if you stopped hiding? If you let yourself be seen, truly seen, with your flaws, your doubts, your unfinished edges? What would happen if you spoke your truth, asked for more, walked taller, even if your voice cracked? Would some people turn away? Yes, but others would lean in. Others would listen. Others would rise to meet you in your courage. And suddenly, life wouldn't feel like something you had to chase, but something that was meeting you at your level of self-worth. You don't have to roar. You don't have to perform. You don't have to become someone you're not. You just have to stop apologizing for being who you already are. Because you, my friend, you are not lazy. You are not unworthy. You are not invisible. You've just been trained to hide. But it's time to step forward now. Not for the world, but for yourself, because hiding may keep you from being judged, but it also keeps you from being free. And freedom is what you were made for. You ever watch a man wear himself out, running in place? He's sweating, breathing heavy, muscles tight. But if you take a step back, you realize something strange. He hasn't moved an inch, and that is how most people live their lives. They're tired, exhausted even, always trying to save, trying to hustle, trying to change. But year after year, they stay in the same financial place, same stress, same struggle, same silent question. Why isn't anything working? And the answer is simple. Not easy, but simple. Effort alone doesn't build wealth. Alignment does. Because the real trap isn't that you're not working hard. The trap is where all that effort is going. You can give your whole life to broken systems. You can give your energy to survival mode habits. You can pour yourself out, trying to fix symptoms while the root stays untouched. And that, my friend, is where most people stay stuck. Not from laziness, but from misalignment. You go to a job that drains you. You spend your paycheck before it even arrives. You chase little distractions, calling it relief. You numb your fears with temporary comforts. Then you beat yourself up. You say things like, I just need more discipline. Maybe I'm not cut out for success. Something's wrong with me, but nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just trapped in a rhythm that doesn't lead where you want to go, and the longer you stay in that rhythm, the more tired you feel, because this isn't about how hard you try. It's about what you're trying to hold on to. And here's the quiet truth. Most people are trying to succeed while staying the same. They want wealth, but don't want to change their relationship with money. They want freedom, but still chase the approval of people who don't live freely. They want a new life, but won't let the old identity die. So they stay busy, so they try. So they run harder in place, but movement isn't progress. And effort isn't alignment. You ever try paddling upstream? You fight the current. You wear yourself out. You think, if I just push a little harder, I'll get there. But what if the river was trying to carry you somewhere else? What if the path of least resistance wasn't laziness, but wisdom? Not passive, not careless, but wise. Because the truth is, sometimes it's not about doing more. Sometimes it's about letting go of the things that are quietly making you poor. Letting go of the pride that keeps you from asking for help. Letting go of the shame that keeps you hiding. Letting go of the belief that suffering is somehow noble. Because if you carry poverty in your spirit, no amount of effort will make you wealthy. I know that's hard to hear, but someone needs to say it. You don't rise by grinding harder in the wrong direction. You rise by shifting inward. You rise by becoming the kind of person who no longer needs to run in place. You don't just do different. You see different. You choose different. You expect different. And little by little, your effort begins to matter. It stops leaking. It starts working, not because you worked harder, but because you finally aimed at truth. The world is full of tired people trying, and it will celebrate your hustle, even as it watches you burn out. But I'll tell you this, as someone who's seen it all, peace is more profitable than pressure. Clarity is more valuable than noise. And alignment, that quiet feeling of moving in the right direction, that's what actually builds a rich life. So maybe you don't need to push harder. Maybe you need to pause. To ask yourself, where is all my energy going? What is it protecting? What truth have I been avoiding because I'm too busy trying? Because once you stop running in place, you'll be amazed how fast you grow. You know what's strange? Most people are waiting for a sign, waiting for permission, waiting for someone to tell them, now it's okay to change. They could leave the job. They could start the project. They could say no, say yes, say finally. But instead, they wait. Not because they're lazy, but because they've been trained to doubt their own authority. See, poverty doesn't always look like an empty wallet. Sometimes it looks like a full heart, with nowhere to pour. A mind full of ideas but no courage to act. A life that's heavy, but no one around says, you don't have to carry that anymore. So you keep carrying it. The weight of other people's expectations. The fear of failure. The pressure to be realistic. And underneath all that, a quiet question. You don't even say out loud, am I allowed to want more? This is the kind of poverty no spreadsheet will ever measure. It doesn't show up in your bank account. It shows up in your decisions. In how small you speak, in how little you ask for, in how long you delay the thing you know you're called to do. You were taught to play it safe, to not ask too much, to blend in, To be grateful for crumbs. So when the door finally cracks open, you hesitate. Not because you don't want it, but because deep down, you still believe someone else has to say yes before you can begin. And that is one of the most dangerous beliefs you can carry, that someone else owns your starting point, that your parents have to understand, that your boss has to bless it, that your friends need to approve. So you keep waiting, and the longer you wait, the more it feels like your dreams were never real to begin with, but they were. They are. You're just standing in the poverty of borrowed permission. You don't need permission to build something sacred. You don't need permission to walk away from the noise. You don't need permission to choose a new life. You only need to trust that what you sense deep inside is not foolishness. It's wisdom. Quiet wisdom. The kind that won't shout. But it also won't leave you alone. It keeps tugging, keeps whispering, keeps asking you to move before you feel fully ready, because that's how it works. You won't feel ready, but the gate won't open until you stop waiting for a key and just walk forward. I've seen this over and over. Good people, hardworking people, living poor, because they still believe someone else decides when they can live free. Let me tell you something. You're grown. You've suffered. You've survived more than anyone knows. You don't need another committee. You don't need another mentor to say it's time. You already know. You've known for years. So today, let this be your permission. Not because I gave it to you, but because you finally decided to stop waiting. That's where real wealth begins. Not in a bank account, but in the soul of a person who stopped asking the world if they're allowed to rise. They just rose. Quietly. Slowly. Fully. And the world, well, the world will catch up later. You ever notice how loud the world has become? Noise everywhere. Not just sound, but stimulation. Screens, updates, opinions, alerts. You pick up your phone to check the time, and 20 minutes vanish. You try to focus, but your thoughts are already somewhere else. Half in the past, half in the future, and never fully here. This isn't laziness. This is exhaustion. Your mind's not broken. It's just overfed. Fed with noise, with comparison, with crisis after crisis that you were never meant to carry. And when you're drowning in that kind of mental clutter, you stop dreaming. You stop building. You stop hearing yourself. Because in all the chaos, you lose your inner compass. A distracted mind can't create. It can't choose. It can't grow anything meaningful, and so you become reactive. You respond to everything, but decide nothing. You check the clock, the news, the feed. You bounce from idea to idea. You start things, but never see them through. Not because you're lazy, but because distraction has taken over the parts of you that used to be calm, steady, certain. And here's the trap. When you live distracted, you don't just lose time, you lose clarity. You forget what matters. You forget what you were aiming for. You forget what peace even feels like. And in that fog, poverty grows. Quietly. Not always in your wallet, but in your attention, because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. So many good people, intelligent, capable people, stay poor, not because they lack talent, but because their energy is fractured into 1,000 tiny pieces. Every ping, every swipe, every scroll steals another ounce of focus that could have built something enduring. And this is the poverty no one talks about, the poverty of focus. You used to be able to sit still, to think for more than 5 minutes without checking something. Now, even silence feels uncomfortable. You reach for your phone like a reflex. Like your hands forgot what it feels like to be empty. You don't know this yet, but that's costing you everything. Because wealth, real wealth, starts with attention. You have to learn to stay with a thought, to sit with discomfort, to watch something grow slowly instead of needing constant stimulation. But that kind of stillness is rare now. And most people are too distracted to even realize what they've lost. You don't need more hours. You don't need more tips. You don't need a better app. You need your mind back. You need your soul back. Because without those, nothing else will hold. Not the income, not the freedom, not the business, not the peace. So here's your quiet challenge. Don't just quit distractions. Reclaim your attention. Let your mornings be slow again. Let your thoughts breathe again. Let silence come back into your life like an old friend you almost forgot. Because buried underneath all that noise is a mind still capable of building a rich, beautiful life. But only if you can hear it, only if you're willing to listen again. So here we are. You've walked with me through the noise, through the hidden roots, through the habits and wounds that quietly held you down. And after all this, I want you to hear something clearly. It was never about how hard you worked, because you've worked hard, you've tried, you've pushed. You've stayed up late, started over, made do with less. So have millions of others. They hustle, they grind. They sacrifice sleep and health, and even family, and still, they remain poor. Why? Because effort without alignment is like paddling in circles. You were told hard work is enough. But no one told you what kind of work. No one told you what direction. No one told you that doing more of the wrong thing just digs the hole deeper. So now you sit here tired, but still broke, frustrated, but still stuck. And deep down, you wonder, what's wrong with me? Let me say it clearly so your soul hears it. Nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. You've just been misled. See, poverty isn't always the absence of effort. Sometimes it's the absence of understanding. No one taught you how to think, how to trust stillness, how to notice your patterns, or question the script you were handed. You were told to be obedient, told to be realistic, told to be grateful for crumbs, while others feasted just out of sight. But gratitude isn't meant to be a cage. It's meant to open your eyes, not close your mouth. Here's the truth that most never say. Your poverty may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. It's yours to shift, yours to unlearn, yours to outgrow. No savior is coming. Number. Policy, no program. No person can replace the awakening you must choose for yourself. Because until you see the pattern, you repeat it. Until you break the rhythm, you dance the same old song. You're not lazy. You're not unlucky. You're not just average. You're simply someone who was never shown what wealth really demands. Clarity, attention, stillness, choice. And the courage to walk away from the familiar struggle into the unfamiliar freedom. That's the part no one prepares you for. Success is not just about rising. It's about leaving behind excuses, leaving behind emotional comfort zones, leaving behind the identity you built around being the underdog. It's painful. It's disorienting. But it's the only way. So if you've made it this far, let me say this as one soul to another. I see you. I know what it's like to quietly question your worth in a world that measures value by noise and numbers. But I also know this, you're not done yet. The story isn't over. You're just turning the page. Start small. But start with truth. Don't look for shortcuts. Look for alignment. Where you spend your attention, where you place your energy, where you set your inner compass. That's where your wealth will grow, or it won't. You don't need a new plan. You need a new posture, one that stands tall, one that listens, one that refuses to confuse comfort with freedom. And when the world tries to pull you back into noise, you'll pause. You'll breathe, and you'll remember, it was never laziness. It was the wrong direction. And now, you know the way out. If this helped you, pass it to someone who's still in the dark. Let the quiet truths travel further than the loud lies ever could.